Welcome to One Bad Podcast. Here's your hosts, KD and Shaner.
All right, Katie, we're talking Black Buffalo, and there's a lot to say. It's funny, as we talk about this stuff, things just come up, and I'm getting more comfortable just like we go off on some tangents because, like, I didn't remember that Kenora trip right off the top of my head, and you reminded me, and it's like, I'm loving this about this podcast is you don't really spend a lot of time sitting in this era again, and it's cool kind of walking through our career because, man, things are coming back to me that I completely forgot about. And this has just it's been the best, man. It's just been great going back over this, and you've jogged my memory on a lot of stuff. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. The stuff just comes I'm like, I didn't think of that until you brought it up,
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say about Black Buffalo, the record, is I do think I'm proud of us for not just like so many bands in our shoes would have just tried to write just simple rock radio hits. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
we know bands like that. Like they're just all the writing is rock stuff that sounds like radio hits. And then the fans are like, it just sounds formulaic, right? And there's no sort of depth on a record, right?
Yeah.
But like you think about Black Buffalo, I think it's probably our deepest in terms of songwriting. Outlaw Josie Wales was still one of my favorites. I think it's one of your best. Land of the Saints, I forgot about. I was going to mention on the last chat, but that's what Dylan Villain's always like that's his favorite song. To me that's like
yeah.
probably my best. If I could be self-aware, it's probably my best drum or my favorite drumming. I mean, I love Red Cloud too because it's got just that feel. But Land of the Saints is just it's one of those. I was going straight Soundgarden, Matt Cameron vibes.
Well, and dude, you've thrown a lot of props my way. Thanks for saying that about Outlaw Josie Wells. Also, thanks to you and Hicks and Granny for always being chill when I'm like, hey, I got this thing. It's based on a Western from the 60s. And you guys are like, okay. Correction, that movie's from the 70s. But, dude, Land of the Saints, like you, and yeah, like this record, like you killed it on that song. And this record specifically, man, you dug into like your rock grooves, like the Bonham stuff, but that song's like you're pushing into almost metal territory with some of that stuff. Like, and obviously Matt Cameron and Soundgarden had a bit of that, right? Like they could, but you're doing it with one kick pedal, which a lot of people probably don't realize. Like, there's so many times that you're playing, and I'm like, how's he doing it with one foot? It's crazy, man. Like you're playing on that record's insane.
Well, thank you, buddy. And I feel like I was chatting with actually my son Levon today and talking about how, he's like, were you really good at soccer when you were young? And I was like, well, I probably was better then because I played it more often, and I was like, same with drumming, like I still play a lot, but I mean, back like in this era, well, I didn't say this to him, but like, when you're playing it 8 hours a day, like that's when you become a pro, right? And that's, I think around that time is when we're probably playing 8 hours a day of drumming, like just at home practicing and then rehearsing with you guys and then playing live. It was like just nonstop playing. And I'm sure we all were on that same sort of regimen. So we were just a well-oiled machine, right? It's that stuff you don't have to, you turn off your brain and just play off instinct, and I mean, those are like, I say this to every musician. It's like you go play your instrument 8 hours a day and then do that for a year and see what happens, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a tight record, and we got to talk about Rats as producer, which I think he was great for us. He pushed us, it's sort of a different direction, like different approach than Danny Craig. Both, I mean, great producers. Rats, I feel like the Black Buffalo record was just overall like sounded less produced maybe than the Red album, like less polished, I guess, but in a good way. We wanted that. We'd done like the sort of the polished big rock record with the Red album, which obviously still people love, but we wanted to have that more of that rawness of sort of like, I remember us saying, give us like that Soundgarden sort of feel, and I think it worked. I mean, as everything is like, it felt like that record was kind of rushed in a way, like we recorded it so quickly, if we had, Soundgarden probably takes several months to record that. We had like a week and a half or something, I think. But again, I'm proud of us. Like we tried to make records that were like Foo Fighters, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, like on those level of bands or Zeppelin, but all those bands took months and months or years sometimes to make a similar record because they had all the money in the world, which we didn't, right? So it's sort of like you're trying to do like Houses of the Holy light because you don't have the budget, or like a Pearl Jam 10 light because you don't have the budget. But I think I still listen to that record, and I'm still very proud of what we did.
Yeah, me too, man. Honestly, again, it's got a lot of my favorite stuff for OBS Records. It has one of my biggest regrets, totally, and it's this is yeah, man. I don't know if you remember. I don't even know if you were in the room at this point, but we something started to happen, and I think this is when it started to happen for me. Was that now we start to get a few more voices in the room, and we had a manager at the time.
Oh yeah, I know what you're gonna say. Yeah.
This is the Decades thing, and it was the first time I didn't listen to my gut, and it just like really, it's always it stuck with me after that, because it was like what happened was the song Decades, which I love that song. It's still one of my favorites that we've written, and I had a lyric in there that was I met a girl from Saskatoon.
Yeah.
Was in it, and that didn't actually refer to anybody specific, but it was kind of like that song. It was about home. It was it had things to do with like it didn't have to specifically be our hometown. It could be anybody's, but like that lyric just sang so well, and it was like just this nice little shout out to our hometown. And our manager came in and he was like, you can't have that lyric. You can't say Saskatoon because it's too specific. It'll never be a hit. If it becomes a single, like, we start getting in this era now where voices start to come in, and there is starting, now that we have the songs written and we're recording, there starts to be this little like, wow, what if this one's the single? And I just remember, like, it's not a huge regret because the song it turned out great, but it didn't become a single and it didn't fucking matter. But it was like, I just wish I'd have said, look, man, you know what? You're not a songwriter. You've never written a song, and you get that with a lot of managers and that kind of thing, where it's like, you've never done this. You don't, that lyric would not have made or broke the song. We know that. Like we got told with Retribution Blues, well, you can't have a song with blues in the title. Well, that was bullshit. Didn't matter. If the song's great, a lyric's not going to make or break it. You know what I mean? But it's a regret, I think, because it was like a stupid thing, really. But it was like, I listened to somebody on the outside other than myself and other than you guys. Right. And it was like, that starts to creep in more and more as we go. But I think like, I just wish I had recorded that lyric, because it would sing so nice anytime we play it at home.
I love that. And it's a great lyric. And you sing it that way live now. You sing it the right way live, right? Well, and I love it. And, and I think it's, and I think it's because it's symbolic, perhaps. That's why it sort of rubs you the wrong way, is that it was symbolic of, like you said, other outside voices start creeping in. And again, it happens just like with the success thing with your first singles, like all of a sudden outside sources start coming in, right? And it happens to every band, right? And it's tough. I think that you having read enough rock and roll documentaries, that you see that some of these outside voices tear bands apart, right?
Yeah.
Like the Clash, for example, like this outside manager started planting a seed and sort of putting a wedge in, and the Clash, it ruined them. One of the greatest bands ever. And but yeah, I think for us it was like, our manager basically just suggesting like, let's change the lyric and make it more mass appealing, because no one knows what Saskatoon is. And I'm like, in hindsight, we should have been like, have you ever listened to Bob Cajun by Tragically Hip?
Yeah.
That's right. Like a smaller town, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. But again, I don't have a ton of regrets from all those years, but there's like these like specific things where you realize that kind of turned into something later on. And we'll get into that with Made in the Name of Rock and Roll. But we should talk about the first single was Vinyl Spin Burner, another suggestion by said manager that we were like, I don't know, it wasn't written for the radio. It was written as a lead-off track. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. It was I remember we talked about the lead-off track is like, OBS is back, boom, in your face, crazy rock song, big riff, crazy drums. It was like, it wasn't meant to be a single. It got pushed as the single. It absolutely bombed.
I think it got to like number 67 or something. You know, it was like it was brutal. Yeah, it didn't even register, right? Like it.
No, I think like, we have some great friends at radio that played it because they love us. And it was like, so we found ourselves in another situation after that with Black Buffalo, very similar to the Red album when we put out Rust Bucket. And then the label was like, oh, well, I guess maybe you guys are done. We got the same bullshit.
Same old bullshit. You know, it's so funny. It's like how many times we have to, it's like the same old movie, but we had to just prove that we can do it. And that was Vinyl Spinner, that was a good learning moment for us because we just realized that rock radio, they're not taking risks. It's not a place for risk, right? They want the safest song. That's why Foo Fighters, and this is no slight to Foo Fighters, Gary's a big fan, but like they're just safe rock and roll. And even though Grohl screams sometimes, and that's what Gary likes, but it's Foo Fighters is so much safer than like Nirvana, right? Like Nirvana,
totally.
If they came around now, it'd be like, whoa, he's screaming at us.
There's a reason you don't hear Scentless Apprentice on the radio. You know what I mean? Exactly. Like it's too much. It's like
I was just listening to that. Nice reference.
I love that track.
But yeah, like we thought we would maybe we're just naive and self-confident in a good way. But like, let's just put on the song. They're gonna blow the doors off mainstream radio. And like, no, we were wrong. So then we opted for Satellite Hotel, right?
Satellite Hotel, which, man, I'll tell you, that song, I'm glad I get to finally tell this story because we labored over that song. Like you said at Kenora, you started to say this, and we knew that like that riff Hicks had, the verses were awesome. We had I had lyrics, melodies. It was just like, this is such a cool tune, and we couldn't finish it. Every chorus we wrote was garbage, and we'd had this happen before with songs we really loved. And we had a song called "My Name Is Nobody" that I remember. Same deal. We were like, it's such a great track. We just couldn't finish it. But I remember that song. I personally took took it upon myself to not let it die. I just remember I came back to the jam space it felt like weeks, and I was like, boys, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna work on a chorus. I'll get something, and I bring it in, and it's like, this sucks. We all hated it. Go home, rewrite it, and finally I stumbled across those chords that become the chorus, and we finally were like, okay, there's something here. And then the four of us sat down and wrote that chorus in its entirety. But I just remember that song. I feel a lot of pride in that song because it was like,
you didn't give up.
It's like, this one can't die. Like, it's too good. Like there was something in those verses. It was just way too good. So luckily we got that chorus, and we're coming up to time here, but we have to tell the story of how this got picked as a single, and that was on you. And we were playing a show at Isle Lacrosse, and we were going to release a different song for our make or break single. And I don't remember what song it was. And this is such a great memory for me because we were at Isle Lacrosse, beautiful community.
For the listeners out there who don't know, I mean, it's a tiny, isolated community up in northern Sask, like a 10-hour drive from Saskatoon or whatever.
Oh yeah, it's way up north.
Yeah.
And we actually we did a festival with Sawyer Brown at that. I think it was Sawyer Brown.
That's right.
But the cool thing is, I have this memory of the show we played up there was in their arena, and their arena was like a classic Saskatchewan hockey rink from built in the 50s, and it had the tiny little dressing rooms. Like if anybody listening has ever been to one of those rinks, it was like, man, a blast from the past. But I remember it's such a cool moment. It was the four of us before the show. We're sitting in this tiny little hockey dressing room. And you were like, you just came out with it. You were like, I got to say, like, I think Satellite Hotel's the single. I don't know if you remember that. And then we really started talking about, okay, well, yeah, is it, but that was you that pushed that. Because it did feel, because you said, let's go with our guts.
Yeah, that's so. I forgot about the memory until you said it now. But yeah, because I remember it because those kind of speeches, I probably would have like belabored a lot in my head over. I would have thought about it a lot before I brought it to you guys. And I think it probably just was on my mind every minute of the day that day. And then I was like, right before we go on stage, instead of doing a pep talk, I'm like, we got together and said, like, have a good show. I'm like, Satellite's the next single. You know, just I feel it in my gut. But that's so cool. That's funny. That's awesome. You remember that? I totally forgot about that.
Oh, dude, and you were right because and we went to the label and did the same exact thing. We had to do a Scarecrows, which was they were like, oh no, like that song, like it's never gonna happen. I don't even know what they were against, to be honest. But to quote my dad, it was on and it was a hit. So, which that was another thing. It was another one of those moments where we were like, kind of at what could have been the end of a really good run, because it was like vinyl tanked. The label was like, we don't know why you were successful. You're obviously not going to be successful anymore. So we're contractually obligated to give you another single. So go ahead. They put Satellite out. One of my favorite videos, honestly. We filmed that in Toronto, and I love the video for Satellite. That was super cool. And then boom, it's our next top 5.
And as we've seen time and time again, it's like when you have success, that's when everyone on your team takes credit for it, you know, label, whatever, manager, like all that. So yes, let's wrap there. But like when you fail in the music biz, it's on you. When you succeed, it's on your team. You know, the team takes credit for it. That seems to be the rule. But at the end of the day, all we have is just our gut instinct, right? Any musician, it's all you have is your gut, right? That's your major gift, you know.
It's all you got, buddy.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to One Bad Podcast.